Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. It is a tight race in Georgia as the vote counting continues. With 91% of the vote in, incumbent Republican Senator David Perdue leads Democrat Jon Ossoff by a narrow margin. Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler has a slight lead over Democrat Raphael Warnock. A reminder, it is unlikely that we will have final results tonight. For more, I want to bring in Caitlin Huey-Burns and Adam Brewster. Caitlin is CBSN's political reporter, and Adam is a CBS News reporter. They are both in Atlanta right now. All right, Adam, what is the very latest that you're hearing from election officials in Georgia? Which areas are we still waiting on data to come in from?
The big data, Elaine, that everyone is waiting for right now is these 171,000 ballots that are supposed to be coming in soon from DeKalb County. That is a heavily Democratic county. President-elect Biden won it by nearly 70 points, 83 to 15 in the November general election. That is the big one that everyone has their eyes on. Gabriel Sterling, an official with the Secretary of State's office, tweeted a short time ago that those ballots should be coming soon. There's some other suburban communities that we're waiting from, parts of the rural areas. During his press conference a short time ago, Sterling said there are votes out there in Republican areas, there are votes in Democratic areas, things may seesaw a little bit. I have to bring things back for just a second to November 4th. I know it's 2021, but I'm going to go back just a couple months. At about 4:30 in the morning, Milwaukee, Wisconsin reported 169,000 absentee ballots. That gave President-elect Biden the lead in Wisconsin, and that changed the trajectory of the race. We don't know yet what these 171,000 absentee, or these ballots, coming in from DeKalb will do, but that is certainly a parallel that jumped out at me as someone who was awake when that happened in Wisconsin.
Yeah. I know, you really have covered it all, Adam, and you're still going. Caitlin, you as well. So Adam touched on it there a moment ago, Caitlin, but remind our viewers why we might be seeing these results swing in one direction or another after some of the results from these particular counties come in.
That's right. It really all depends on what kind of voters are in those counties. So Adam mentioned DeKalb County. There are 4 counties surrounding and including Atlanta. These are the most populous counties in the state, and these are where a bulk of the Democratic votes are. So as we see those numbers from DeKalb, we expect those to benefit Democrats because that is a traditionally Democratic area. Just as we look at other counties that are traditionally Republican, when those votes come in, you might see a tick up for the Republicans. So it really depends on where they are. And that's really important to note because we have the president tweeting tonight completely false things again, saying that there are voting dumps. That's not what's happening here. These are votes that are being reported, and that those numbers are being released. And especially in these big populous counties, there are a lot of people. So it takes a while to kind of count those numbers.
Well, Caitlin, the president has been trying to raise doubts about the election, even though it hasn't been called. Republicans are currently leading, and he tweeted about that voter dump that you mentioned. When you look at sort of the bigger picture of where things stand for him now and what we've seen with his baseless claims of widespread voter fraud, does this kind of approach on Twitter tonight achieve anything for him? What does that strategy seem to be aimed at doing?
That's right, Elaine. I mean, it seems like if you are tweeting about election fraud without any evidence already at this point of the night, it doesn't look like the numbers are going your way. At least that's what we can perhaps deduce from those statements, because this is kind of similar to what the president had been doing in the lead up to the presidential election, claiming without evidence that the election would be rigged before the election even took place. Of course, we know those allegations have been false, but he's continued to wage them, continued to wage attacks on the process because he hasn't been able to bring himself to concede his own race here. I mean, it was really telling when he was campaigning here in Georgia, trying to get people to come out in this runoff, but still saying that he thought the election had been falsely reported and that he thought that he won Georgia big, which of course we know is not true. The election was recounted 3 times here, including by hand, and was certified by the electors here.
Well, Adam, as we've mentioned, President-elect Joe Biden won the presidential contest in Georgia, but, things are razor tight right now, and this election could go to the 2 Republican candidates. Help us understand the various factors at play when you look at the political landscape in Georgia right now.
Well, certainly some of the things that would determine if that would happen, would be just the numbers in some of the rural areas where President Trump and Republicans did so well in November. Other areas we'll be seeing where the dust settles in some of those Atlanta suburbs, especially the areas that used to be more favorable to Republicans in places like Gwinnett and Cobb County, where back in November, Jon Ossoff ran behind President-elect Biden in those counties. And so there were questions then about, how might voters perhaps who voted for President-elect Biden and then also for Senator Perdue. Earlier tonight, I was talking to you, Elaine, from a precinct in Cobb County that did just that, and it was by a small margin. But when you cobble up those handful of precincts, however many there are, even if it's just a few hundred votes at each one, those can add up pretty quickly. And when you're talking about a tight race, it was less than 12,000 votes in the presidential race. All of those votes matter. So far tonight, we have seen the Democratic candidates performing well in some of those areas. One thing that I do want to note that will be interesting to see when all the votes are counted is there was a 3rd race on this ballot, and that was for the Public Service Commission. And throughout most of the night, the Republican candidate in that race, Bubba McDonald, has been either outperforming or just, right neck and neck with Senators Loeffler and Perdue. I'm sure many people before they voted in this race may have never voted for the Public Service Commission in their life, but it was such a short ballot, it was there. And that's people who voted for a Republican there, perhaps not knowing anything about him, but because he's a Republican. It will be interesting to see if he does end up, when all those votes are counted, with more total votes than Senators Loeffler and Perdue.
So, Adam, I wanted to ask you, because I know you were monitoring this, Gabriel Sterling, you mentioned, for folks who don't know, he's the voting system implementation manager, is that right, Adam, for the state of Georgia?
Yes.
Basically works for the Secretary of State's office. So he gave a bit of an update earlier, took some questions, but what did he say, Adam, about a time frame here? Because when we've been talking with our Anthony Salvanto, our CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, throughout the night, he has been remarking about how quickly these results are actually coming back in. All of us are sort of waiting with bated breath, but he was saying when you compare it to how the results of the general election came in, that actually things, knock on wood, seem to be moving along at a quicker clip than they were back on election night in November. So what did Gabriel Sterling say about updates and what we should expect here moving forward throughout the next few hours?
Well, I think Gabriel Sterling has learned it is hard to make predictions about when the final vote will be counted. So he has not given us, necessarily an exact timeline of when that may happen. He said it was going to take a while. Earlier today, he said it would probably go into tomorrow. But of course, it'll depend on what the margins of those races are. The bulk of the vote was counted in the presidential race, but the results were so close that when you were counting tens of thousands of ballots, 20, 30,000 ballots that were remaining that ultimately put President-elect Biden ahead of President Trump out of 5 million votes cast. I mean, that is fractions of a vote. And so there is a chance that if these races are close, we could be seeing very small numbers get dragged out and take a little bit longer. But so far, things have been moving well. It's just a matter of if those margins stay razor thin and get very, very close, how long it takes, because, obviously, the tighter the race is, the more data you need before it can be called.